800-666-0724.
The year we decide.
The only place for fair and balanced coverage. It's all been leading up to this.
The candidates, the issues.
No one covers it better.
Real political coverage.
Smart political analysis.
Only America's election headquarters.
The attack was carried out by Jap torpedo planes together with dive bombers.
17-year-old George Bush was on his high school campus when he heard the stunning news of the attack on Pearl Harbor.
I volunteered on June 12th, 1942. That was my 18th birthday, and I went in as a seaman second class, and then less than a year later, got my wings in commission.
That made Bush the youngest naval aviator of the time. He flew a TBM Avenger, a torpedo bomber, which he nicknamed after his high school sweetheart, Barbara Pierce. The two had met at a dance shortly after the Pearl Harbor attack. On one of his bombing runs, he and his crew came under intense anti-aircraft fire.
We'll never forget it. September 2nd, 1944, we were making a final strike on the Bonin Islands. The island was Chichijima. I felt this jolt. I could see the fire all around, anti-aircraft. And then suddenly my plane was on fire.
With his plane burning, the young pilot continued his raid, completing his mission before instructing his crew to bail out, then escaping himself. For this feat, George Bush was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross.
So I'm floating around in this raft, paddling, and then all of a sudden saw this submarine surface, and they had been watching me through the periscope, and then they picked me up.
Bush lost his crew. He wrote a letter to his parents from the submarine about his ordeal in battle, expressing the pain he felt for his dead comrades.
Last night I rolled and tossed. I kept reliving the whole experience. My heart aches for the families of those two boys with me.
When discharged, Lieutenant Junior Grade George Herbert Walker Bush had flown 58 combat missions and was a decorated aviator. After the war, he and Barbara got married. Then it was off to Yale University. In addition to doing well in the classroom, he stood out on the baseball diamond, playing in 2 college baseball World Series. As captain in his senior year, he met the legendary Babe Ruth. Remarkably, he still had time to volunteer.
Even while a student at Yale, he was very active in all kinds of campus service activities, including leading a drive to raise funds for the United Negro College Fund.
Bush graduated with honors in just 2.5 years, earning a BA degree in economics. Then he and Barbara, now proud parents of their first child, George W., set out to Texas. He was going to try his hand in the oil exploration business.
He went the day after he graduated from college, drove down the Little Red Studebaker. He was offered a job there, and he needed a job. He had a wife and a baby.
By 1949, they had a second child, Robin, and were living in Midland, Texas. Here the Bushes began making a life for themselves. Bush became an entrepreneur, starting his own oil company. They immersed themselves in their communities, always finding some time to give back.
He was involved in creating Little League teams and involved in additional activities that benefited the city and the region.
It's almost bred into his DNA to give to others. The values that led him as a young businessman in Midland, Texas, to help found the first YMCA in 1952. It's not something he did for political gain.
In 1953, their third child, John Ellis, was born. Sadly, it was also the same year 3-year-old Robin was diagnosed with leukemia, an incurable disease at that time. She died on October 11, 1953. The Bushes donated her body to science to help other children. And it didn't stop there.
George Bush was a point of light long before that phrase existed. After their daughter Robin passed away from leukemia, they started the Bright Star Foundation to help with cancer research.
It was just part of the culture of our family to help others in little ways, and in their cases, in very big ways.
Neil Mallon Bush arrived in 1955. His brother Marvin followed the next year, and daughter Dorothy completed the Bush clan in 1959. The birth of Dora seemed to fill the void left by the death of his first little girl. Bush poured out his heart in a letter to his mother about the need for another daughter.
We need someone who's afraid of frogs. We need someone to cry when I get mad, not argue. We need a little one who can kiss without leaving egg or jam or gum. We need a girl.
In 1959, George Bush relocated his family to Houston, Texas, where he co-founded Zapata Offshore. He was a success in the oil business, but soon his ambition turned to politics. He ran for Harris County Republican Party chairman in 1962 and won. His career in politics had begun. He lost a Senate bid to incumbent Democrat Ralph Yarborough in 1964. But 2 years later, he made a run for Congress and became the first Republican representative for Houston.
The most controversial vote that Congressman Bush had to make was in 1968 on an open housing bill. He could not imagine, as a member of Congress, telling a returning serviceman that they would not be able to get public housing because of their skin color.
And he went back to Texas, and people were irate, and we had threats. He went out to a town hall meeting.
Jim Baker told me George Bush was going in to tell the crowd that he was voting for open housing. And Jim said all the way through that gym, I thought we were going to be killed. By the end of the evening, he had turned the crowd.
As busy as Congressman Bush was, he still made time to volunteer in his home community.
When he would come home to Houston from the Congress, he'd be engaged in softball support for an inner city softball team and that kind of. So he and my mother constantly gave back. My father said that every definition of a successful life must include service to others, and that's right.
Just ahead, how George Bush created one of the longest resumes in public service as he prepared himself for the presidency, and how his own words in a campaign speech would come back to haunt him in his bid for a second term.
Read my lips. No, no.